This is All Out Politics, news, debate and opinion from the heart of Westminster. And time now for our daily debate. And in the coming weeks, we're going to be sampling the temperature of Brexit Britain all around the country, bringing together the people who voted Remain and Leave across the nation. Today, Nick Martin is in Chesterfield. Over to you, Nick.
Yes, a very good morning from Penny Hydraulics, a family-run company here on the outskirts of Chesterfield, and very much like the rest of the country, split down the middle when it comes to whether people here thought we should remain or leave the EU. I'm going to introduce you to our panel here on the factory floor today. I'm joined now by the General Sales Manager, Jess Penny. Hello, Jess.
Hi, morning.
This is the welder, John Howe.
Hello, Nick.
And the Services Director, Tim Penny.
Hi, morning, Nick.
And finally, we've got Martin Eade, who you've worked here for about 8 years, Martin.
Morning, yes.
Martin, quickly, I'm going to run through how you all voted. How did you vote in the EU referendum?
I voted to leave.
Tim?
Oh, to remain. I voted to leave.
Jess?
I voted to remain.
Just tell me a bit about the company and what was going on in the back of your mind when you were in the voting booth for the referendum.
Sure, yeah. So we're obviously a family business. We've been going for 37 years. Being a family member myself, the future of the business is massively important to me, and that was kind of a key driver in me voting to remain.
What has been the effect on the company since Brexit?
I think overnight we saw a huge increase in the price of imported goods for our component parts for our core product, which are vehicle-mounted cranes. And that obviously is an instant thing which has happened, which is chipping away at our margins. So that's been a negative, to be honest.
We'll come back to that, Jess.
Sure.
John, how did you vote? I mean, you voted to leave. What were your reasons for wanting to leave the EU?
Because I'm fed up having to conform to what Europe wants to do. We're in Ireland, we should be able to do what we want to do.
Did you, when you voted to leave, did you have any consideration of how it might affect you here at work or in the job you do?
No, not really, because it's family and friend and we're always busy.
Are you surprised to hear from Jess to say that after we voted to leave the EU, there was an immediate impact on the balance sheets? Things became more expensive, the pound fluctuating meant that products here became more expensive. Are you surprised by that?
A little bit, but it's going to flatten off eventually, isn't it? And then everything's going to go back to how it was.
Well, let's ask Tim that. Tim, you're the service director. You see what comes and goes in this business. I mean, from what you see, what's been the effect of our decision to leave the EU here?
Well, I think to an extent John's right. It's very, very early days. We're less than 6 months in to unravelling an agreement that has been established over decades. Immediately, yeah, we've got an increase in some of our component costs that we import, and in the medium term we're going to struggle to hold our prices next year, probably towards the end of next year. At the moment, a lot of those increasing costs are being burdened by our suppliers.
So this company is now working harder than it was before the referendum to make the same amount of money?
Sure, we're having to work a little harder, but I think the message from the company's point of view is that so far, other than the interest rate, little has changed. It's business as usual. We're still confident about the future. We were tremendously heartened to hear Nissan's decision that they're going to continue to invest in the UK. A lot of our customers work in the supply chain for large multinationals, such as Nissan, in the automotive sector, pharmaceutical sector and in the aerospace sector. So those companies are very, very important to us, and it's important that they continue to invest in the UK.
I want to bring in Martin. Now, Martin, we were chatting before we came on air, and you were taking me back to 1975, to the last referendum, and you still hold the same views as you hold now. I mean, what are those views?
Well,
what do you think?
I think originally the idea of the common market, as it was then, was a good idea about trade. But it's gone from that to being dictated to by virtually other governments in Europe, which I think people of my age have sort of kicked against. And I can understand the younger age being, doubtful about coming out of Europe. But if, we've lived in a time when we didn't have, a European community, and everything was fine.
But are you surprised to hear from Jess to say that after we decided to leave the EU, things started to change in this company? Components were thousands of pounds more. It was more difficult to trade with partners in Europe.
Well, I think that was a panic. I think that's what happened. People panicked and blamed everything on the exit vote. I think things will pick up eventually. I think we're quite confidently able to trade with Europe and the rest of the world.
Let's bring Jess back in. Jess Penny, who's the General Sales Manager, also deals with marketing. Jess, give me a few examples of what happened after that decision. I mean, some examples of what became more expensive, what changed, and how you started to change as a company.
Sure. So I think two examples spring to mind. One particular part is a component part that we bring in from overseas, and it's a hoist for our core product, which is cranes. So the cost of those actually increased by £8,500 overnight, and that's £8,500 per skid. So that's quite a big increase. What we're doing,
a shock to the system, as much as anything, is it?
It is, yeah, it is, and that's one of our component parts. What we're trying to do is really now be proactive. We've actually made some changes to our marketing campaigns, and we're really working hard with our overseas distributors. We have 22 throughout the EU and overseas. So we're working really hard with them at the moment to try and drive overseas sales.
To get them to sell more for you?
Correct,
You need to sell more, you need to work harder.
Work harder for us, and that hopefully is going to counterbalance, you know, the increase in those component parts.
Let me ask John just next to you. John, this company now has to work harder because of our intention to leave the EU. Presumably you don't regret your decision to vote leave.
No, not at all. But like I say, it's a working firm, and we're all just working as hard as what we always have done. So
you're confident in Jess and Tim and everyone else who runs this company that they'll be able to weather this?
Well, yeah, because we've got a really good product, and we've got, you know, multiple different products in this firm, and they're all selling well. So while we're selling well, we're all going to have decent jobs, and we're all working hard to keep those jobs going.
Is the opinion talked about a lot in the company? Those who left, those who wanted to stay? I mean, is it frustrating for you to have to be in this situation now that things are a little bit harder?
It's not how I personally would have chosen it to go. It's not something that's, I would say, really widely spoken about within the company. I think it possibly was done actually before the decision was made, but it's not been widely spoken about afterwards.
Let me just bring in Tim, who's Service Director. How do you see the future panning out for this company as we go through the process of leaving the EU?
Well, I think there are some fundamentals in the way we trade with the EU and the rest of the world that in the long term won't fundamentally change. We've all got vested interests in those businesses, and we are very, very confident about the future. We've got, as John has said, a good set of products. We've got some good established markets, and it's a case of wait and see. But while we're waiting and seeing, we concentrate on quality, concentrate on looking after our customers, and yeah, the future's bright.
Martin, no regrets?
Not at all, no.
Do you understand what Tim and Jess are saying?
I understand, yeah, totally understand. But there's more to it than just trade. The common market, as I said to start with, was just a common market where everybody was free to trade with each other. But it went far away from that.
You believe that we were losing control over every aspect of our lives.
Everything.
But did you realise what you've just heard today, the financial impact that leaving the EU is having on this company? Did you realise that? Are you surprised by that?
No, I'm not surprised at all. I fully expected that to happen. Like I said, I think it will level out eventually.
Thank you all. Thanks so much for joining us from Penny Hydraulics here in Chesterfield, a company with fascinating views to come out of our decision to leave the EU. This is just one business across the United Kingdom which is now trying to figure out its route through our exit out of the EU. So many decisions to be made, so many financial implications. But as we've just heard there from our panel, there's a lot to agree with and there's a lot to disagree with. But companies like this now have to get their heads down and weather this through as we begin the process of leaving the EU. Back to you.
Fascinating.